Sometimes you come across certain concepts, certain perspectives and ideas that change the way you look at the world. And in this video, I'm going to talk about 3 such core ideas that are at the center of these 3 amazing books. Now, you may already be vaguely familiar with these ideas because they're all around you, but there's a good chance that you may not have fully considered them. But once you come across a detailed piece of work, such as a book that explores an idea in detail, that calls out certain unsaid things in a certain way, then it all starts to come together and make sense. And in that process, you discover a new lens, a new framework that can impact your day-to-day decision making, your relationships with people around you, your relationship with society at large. But most importantly, it may change the relationship you have with yourself. It may make you question your own assumptions and beliefs, and that questioning can lead to self-growth. Alright, so the first book from this list is an amazing book called The Status Game by Storr. Now, this book explores this idea that we humans have an innate need to belong to a group, but once we become part of that group, we start to seek some sort of status within it. And the reason why we do that is because a higher status on physical level presents us with the opportunity to have more resources for survival. And a higher status on a biological level means that we will have more mating opportunities. But on a psychological level, it also fulfills the emotional needs for meaning, for purpose, and for self-worth. And a higher status also gets us the approval of the other members of the society. Now, these things may not be evident to us or even make sense to us because there's millions of years of evolutionary biology at play here. We live in modern times, but the primitive brains that we carry around, it still thrives on aggression and it still shows dominance. So while we may not try to kill other people to get status within a particular group, we may do it in other indirect ways. We may do it in work settings. We may do it in day-to-day interactions, in social settings, or even when we sense there is an invisible audience watching us. And the more complex a society gets, the more nuanced these games become, because we keep adding more variations and layers to it. So in the modern context, you can spot this game of status all around you. There are some obvious ways where you can notice this, like certain individuals try to display their wealth, some try to display their physique, some try to display their status in terms of the class that they belong to. But then there are some non-obvious ways, some soft ways as well, where we play these games. And that's the kind of status game we do not realize we are continuously playing, because it's very nuanced, very subtle. It's done without any sort of guilt or remorse. In fact, it's done with pride. And it's also not looked down upon because they are harmless to a certain degree. So for instance, someone may find exclusivity in some form of knowledge or experience to separate himself from the crowd, or someone may take an anti-popular opinion because he wants to create his own superiority within that viewpoint. Someone may virtue signal on social media to get everyone's attention while putting a group of individuals and their actions in negative light. And in day-to-day interactions, someone may brag about their lifestyle choices or parenting choices or health choices to show that they are better than everybody else. They may not say that explicitly, but that's often what they're hinting at. So it doesn't matter who we are all at some level continuously playing this game, irrespective of how we operate in the world. And a lot of times we are not even aware about them, and we are certainly not playing these games with a malicious intent. We're just playing them because it's an inherent part of human biology. We're just wired to play these games. And the more connected and global, local the world becomes, the more variations of these games will emerge. The idea is that once you're aware that you live in a world where you are playing a game of status all of the time, and you're also surrounded by people who are playing these games, you start to look at the world very differently. You start noticing these games all around you at all levels. In social gatherings, you might notice how people name drop or share stories that are well crafted to impress others. You may look at your workplace and Zoom meetings and see how your colleagues try to steal every opportunity to get more spotlight and recognition, even when it's not really needed. You may see people in casual conversations subtly trying to compete for the status of being someone who has more knowledge. And even those people who are trying to take an anti-approach to everything, even they are trying to compete for the status within a group that thrives on non-conformity. But honestly, it's not always a bad thing, and you also can't really avoid it or correct other people. But just having this awareness, by just noticing these dynamic ways that can result in zero-sum games where if you win, the other person loses, can make you mindful of your own behavior. It can help you decide whether it's even worth playing these games. Do you really want to invest your time and energy in playing a game that doesn't serve you, but you are still unknowingly playing it and coming out on the other side completely drained out without any sort of rewards? It can also make you look within and question why you make certain choices or why you say certain things. Are you genuinely interested in spreading positivity and uplifting others, or are you actually seeking approval and status? And once you start understanding that, once you start questioning this behavior and start gathering answers, reasons, and perspectives around this aspect of human nature, you can actually build greater empathy and have more patience. You may realize that people sometimes are doing these things not for personal gains, but just to fulfill the basic human need of belonging and protection and love, that they're trying to perhaps make up for something that they lack, which can then give you a new framework, a new viewpoint to evaluate every situation and put things in perspective. And doing that may just ease the pain, reduce the anger or frustration, and take care of other internal emotional turmoils, and can help you be at peace with yourself. Alright, the second idea that I want to talk about is called the paradox of choice, from the book by the same name. Because generally speaking, we intuitively think that the more choices we have, the better off we are. Whether it's the number of dresses we have lying in the wardrobe, or the number of shows and movies we can watch on a given day through streaming platforms, or the number of cookies to choose from in the supermarket aisle. But the truth is that the more choices we have, the more anxiety we have, and it leads to less satisfaction. The more choices we are offered, the more anxiety we have of making the best decision. And that process of making a lot of decisions usually tires us out, because if you're making dozens of those decisions in a given day, we are overloading our cognition and reducing our mental bandwidth. And the worst part is that at the end of all of it, when we have made a choice, we are most likely going to be dissatisfied with it, because we are always going to feel like we missed out on something better. So in essence, having more options is not often the best thing that can happen to us. It is a very counterintuitive way of thinking, and unless it's called out or explained properly, we do not think of it as a bad thing. We think of it as a symbol of affluence. We think of it as the sign of prosperity and growth. And it is all of that, but it's not just all of that, because the freedom and the ability to make these choices also come with its own downsides. Because for instance, let's say you are someone who likes to maximize your happiness in every way possible. You are someone who aspires to make the best decision and squeeze maximum joy or benefit out of every situation. Now, for a maximizer like you, even a slightly lesser efficient choice would mean a decrease in overall satisfaction and a post-decision regret, which could then mean that you will blame yourself for not having made the best decisions, best choices, which then can also mean that you keep thinking about the results or the outcomes even long after the event is over, which then means that the next time you are in a similar situation, you would try to spend more time, do more research, to make sure that you are making the best decision this time, while still having all the possibilities that you still may not be able to make the best decision. So if that happens, if you don't make the best decision 3, 4, 5 times in a row, you may start doubting your own abilities or blaming the list of choices presented to you. The point is, having an array of choices has a huge latent impact on our psychological well-being. So one of the things that this book talks about is this concept of satisficing, which is a term coined by the economist Herbert Simon for decision making. It's this idea that if the choice that you are going to make or the option that you're going to pick results in 2 things, number 1, your personal satisfaction, and number 2, an adequate result, then that thing is the optimal solution. Now, it may not be the best solution, but that's okay, because you don't need the best solution for everything in life, because we don't have the time or energy or even the information to be able to make the best decision every single time. So this idea of satisficing basically tells us to look for good enough options, solutions, and accept certain constraints that are part of navigating the problem of having abundant choices. And I think it's a great mental model model that you can use to make decisions when presented with multiple choices. Because the nature of life is such that there's always a choice waiting to be made, whether it's between picking the best alternative or choosing your next move. Alright, so the third book that I want to talk about is one of the most influential books of this era. And unlike the other two books that are more about human or group psychology, this one falls in the category of spirituality, mindfulness, but offers some real sound advice for understanding our own self and our relationship with the world. I'm sure you would have heard of this book. It's called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And this book has about 7 or 8 key ideas in it. They're all in some ways inspired by various philosophies from different religions, but they're not central to anyone in particular. So in that sense, it's a philosophy of its own. It's very eclectic, very non-denominational, and it's aimed to reach a broad audience, regardless of their religious or spiritual background. Like I said, there are a few ideas presented in this book, but the center idea to all of that is the way he describes our sense of time. As in, we often think of time as something that is linear, the arrow of time, which moves from the past to the present and then goes to the future, or at least that's how it appears to us. So because of that, we have the concept of the past and the present and the future, and we have various emotions that are tied to them. So for example, a bad experience from the past may cause suffering when we think about it, and an important event that will happen in the future may give us anxiety. But the philosophy of this book is that nothing happened in the past and nothing happens in the future, and everything happens in the now, and that we experience the past and the future as a series of present moments. So basically, when you're thinking of the past, you are experiencing certain emotions and sensations, but then you are experiencing all of those emotions in the present. Same way, if you're anticipating the future and feeling certain emotions, you're experiencing all the emotions in the present. In other words, you cannot leave the present moment to go anywhere because it doesn't technically happen. So the idea is that when you realize and practice this, when you live in the present moment, or at least start looking at all your problems through this lens, it's likely going to reduce suffering. And I know it just doesn't make sense to the logical brain, and you may have dozens of questions, and that's why the format of this book is great, because most of it is in the form of questions and answers. So the questions are being asked from an inquisitive student and the answers are coming from a knowledgeable teacher. Because when you come across a concept like this, you are first confused and have so many questions, but you don't even know what to ask, how to even frame a right question. You don't even know what qualifies as a right question. So that's why this question answer format really works for this book, because it attacks the concept from all the angles and then tries to give a logical answer. And the other thing that this book talks about is the concept of the pain body, which is basically the personification of all the subjective things that cause pain. So basically, your pain comes from your own experiences and interpretations of those experiences. And the more you feed this pain body, the stronger it gets. And the whole point of this pain body is to make you feel miserable. It's this invisible enemy within you that can become so strong that you start identifying yourself with it. It could then become your identity. And once it becomes a part of your identity, it's hard to let go of it. It's hard to not identify with it. So it's basically, again, a very simplified version of what we already know about negative self-talk, traumas, emotional baggage, shadow self, whatever you want to call it. It's the same idea. But the reason why this book is important is because it's a very simple approach towards living a positive, mindful, and somewhat stoic and practical life. It reads as spiritual text, but I would say it's a nice assortment of psychology, religion, and science-based concepts, all distilled in the form of simple texts. So in that sense, it's easy for most of us to understand, even if we do not have any prior knowledge about these things. So if you're just getting exposed to this, it may take some time, and the chances are over a period of time, you will have a much better relationship with your own mind. And once that happens, everything starts to fall in place, because our mind is a past correcting and a future predicting machine. And if you want to know more about what it does, I talk about some of the concepts in this video over here. Check it out, and I'll see you next time.